Good morning, America. Mostly just the YouTube parts of America. I would like to introduce to you a new series that I am creating that I would like to call very creatively, very uniquely, inspired even, Knives of the World. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. I brought us out here into the studio, by that I mean the shop, because the kids are all asleep inside and I can't go out to the woods. And I want to bring to you this idea that a knife is more than just what we typically think of it. A knife is not just a weapon. It is not just a tool for cutting. A knife is capable of being a cultural and historical symbol of a people. And I'm talking things like the puko, or the kukri, or the bolo, or starting here in America, the Bowie. That was weird, sorry. So let me get into it, starting off here with just a little bit of the history about the Bowie. Before I'm gonna keep it short because it's not a history deal. This is a socio-political exploration. And so what I wanna start off, so here we go. So this is the thing, the history of it. So the Bowie first was made super famous by Jim Bowie, who killed a guy, at least one, in a sandbar fight. It's not a sandbar fight, it's called the sandbar fight. He did this after being stabbed a bunch of times and then running a guy through with his Bowie knife. Also, he did this after being shot and stabbed a bunch of times and running a guy through with his Bowie knife, and or doing it, just getting into a scrabble at the sandbar fight and running a guy through with his Bowie knife. All we know for certain is Jim Bowie stabbed a guy with something like this. Actually, it was nothing like this. Let me get to that. The Bowie knife that Jim Bowie used in the sandbar fight was actually a gift from his brother Resin, because he was like, Jim, you're an idiot. You're constantly getting into dumb fights. You need one of these for protection. Probably went exactly like that, I'm sure. But that knife was actually a very slightly modified butcher knife intended for hunting. So it was a large knife, but it had a straight back with a drop point versus this growing swell like Ron Jeremy into a clip point. This knife didn't exist until years later, after Jim Bowie went to a blacksmith and was like, hey, what if you made me a knife that looked like this? By this point, he was already famous. The Bowie knife was already famous. People are starting to carry them all across the country. Now, it's kind of more famous in the South, particularly, but it's one of those things where you got to keep in mind, after he came up with this design, Jim did, and made these, it spread like wildfire. Fire, hot fire, fire, hot fire. It spread like wildfire. To where even Tennessee was like, dude, people are carrying these giant knives and killing each other. Can we get rid of this knife? And they tried to outlaw it, and in typical American fashion, outlawed a thing we didn't like, and then everyone else was like, screw you! And everyone bought them. So that happened, and then it became one of those standard features where you would see many, particularly Confederate soldiers carrying a Bowie knife as their dedicated blade, or their issue blade. There was no standard issue blade in those days, but that was had a knuckle guard on it. That was kind of the famous Confederate design. But even as the design spread in popularity, it wasn't just the Confederates that carried this. You saw an increasing number of Union soldiers carrying these, and these knives began to completely and utterly usurp cane swords and daggers and everything else. It became the Bowie. This is what you carried. And Jim Bowie's reputation was later finally deeply cemented at the Alamo, where he either lied in bed and waited to die because he was sick, he lied in bed, waited to die because he was sick, got up and stabbed a guy, or was sick, said, "I don't care, this is America," pulled out 10 knives and was throwing them across the Alamo and killed like 13 people with 4 knives doing crazy stuff. No one really knows exactly. There's a few versions of that story, and that's kind of the beauty and the point of this. That leads me straight into the let's talk about this as a symbol of America. There was another thought that was awesome. I might just let it wander in there. All right, so let's talk about why this knife is so beautifully, uniquely American. One, the mystery of it, the mythology of it, nay, the legend of it. This knife is steeped in legend. The simple fact that the sandbar fight was spread across the country through newspapers, through 1 billion different versions, indicates that there's no one clear, obvious story about how the sandbar fight went down. If you go and search it up, you'll find dozens of different versions of how the sandbar fight happened. And the same with the Alamo. There's a dozen different versions of how the Alamo went down. Just mentioning in the history before, it was this and or this and or this and or this, and no one knows. And it's just like America. The stories we tell ourselves about how our country got started and about how we became who we are legendary. Legendary. And there's also a dozen different versions, most of them inaccurate. Same with the origins of the Bowie knife. Even the design. Some accounts I found were the blacksmith that made this design that Jim made himself was in Baton Rouge. Another one was in Michigan. Like, how do we not know? No one knows. That means America in its heart designed this knife. And just like everything else we've done before, there's the real version lost somewhere in time, and everything else is legend. The Bowie knife is legend. The second thing I love about this knife is the fact that even today, if you were to just look at the bottom, this thing was designed in Oregon, made in China. This one was made in China. This was actually not made in China. This probably was. This particular Bowie. But the thing that I think is great about this is this particular Bowie design is actually called the Sheffield Bowie, and the reason for that is because they became massively manufactured in Sheffield, England. Sheffield's kind of a region, or a county, I think, kind of like Solingen, Germany, that was renowned for knife making. Since England won the race to the Industrial Revolution, they were super set up. And when they learned just how much Americans love the Bowie, they started to mass produce these things and then sell them back to us with all of these super patriotic and American designs with flags and, Yankee Forever and Death to it, and it depended on who they were selling it to, whether it was the Confederacy or the Union or post-war to whoever, and it was always about using the knife to build up American patriotism through the market, which is super American. And the next thing that's super American about this is just how gaudy and flashy it is. It's big, it's loud, it's in command. When a Bowie knife comes out, you know it's there, just like an American anywhere else. And damn it if that's not beautiful in us. This is Hollywood, just like we are Hollywood. And you may hate Hollywood now, but they represent you across the globe, love it or hate it. So does the military. So I guess pick whatever version you want. This is a legendary story. And then lastly, it's just the utilitarianism of it. And this, I think, is the best part. This design, when it comes out, yes, it's I am here, look at me. And the next thing that comes after that is not only I am here, look at me, but feel fear, see the danger. Look at this thing. This is a war tool, but it's not just a war tool. Its original design, its humble beginnings, it didn't have a guard. It was a butcher knife. It was a hunting knife. It was a tool for cutting meat. And not just human meat, but eating meat. And its overall design, you know, one of the things that I think you got to consider, especially if you were to ask any soldier today, ask the Marines, the combat and utility knife, yes, combat comes first, and yes, even seeing its DNA in the Bowie here, and the designers of the knife admitted this is a Bowie-like knife. But yeah, it's a combat knife. It was designed to be able to do that, but it's also a utility knife. And if you ask, especially in a Marine today, and dating back to, say, the advent of automatic rifles and longer range combat, the knife is not used for as much combat. It's a thing that you had to have with you to just do things you needed, utility, everyday tasks. And when we're talking Civil War era, where we're still in the reign of the musket, yeah, this definitely got used for actual combat way more than, say, these guys do, like on a regular basis. But the fact is that they had a knife on their hip at all times for whatever was needed, not just combat. And so this kind of tool needed to not only be able to kill, but also be able to start fires, cook food, mend clothing. It's just as capable on the battlefield as it is the wilderness field, as it is the crafting table, as crazy as that sounds, because this design is just the right size and just the right utility to be able to choke upon the blade and do fine detailed tasks, as well as chop like a mofo. And if you get the right design and the right tool, it's going to be a one knife kind of scenario, one tool option situation. And that's what this Bowie is. And I think that's the thing that's so American about it, is yes, it's huge, it's big, it's loud, it reeks of danger, but at its core it has humble beginnings. It has utilitarian beginnings, just like America. This knife is us. And I love it. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate your viewership. Thanks for checking it out. Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree with what I said? Leave some comments below. And remember to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, wherever they are. And make sure to check out the Patreon if you like what I do. Become a patron of For This Land, help spread the word and the message of knowledge and togetherness and all that other jab stuff. Also, down in the link below, or the description below, there are links to modern Bowie designs that I think are phenomenal. I don't own them, but I would still support them. And anything you purchase in those links helps give kickbacks to the channel, provides support. And I absolutely love and appreciate your support and viewership. Godspeed, don't get eaten by a bear. And remember, whatever you do for this land, you do for everybody. Ah.